Well, welcome everyone to the 27th Degree with Chris and Nancy from 27 Degrees Consulting. Today, we're really excited to have Barbara Smith with us, and Barbara's going to talk a bit about some mental health issues, which have really been a major concern during this pandemic. I know that with my practice, I see a lot more patients coming in who have anxiety, depression, and just general difficulty dealing with the pandemic. I see a lot more substance abuse issues, and people who do have underlying substance abuse issues really having those issues ramp up. So I think we're going to talk a little bit about that today. I'm really excited for this podcast. There's really a need for it. Before we get going, I want to just recognize our sponsor. We're really excited to have Bay Coast as our sponsor. Bay Coast Bank is just right for all your financial needs. Visit Bay Coast Bank or call 508-678-7641 to learn more. So without further ado, Barbara, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? We'll start with that, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm really so glad to be here and to talk about this subject because it's a really timely one. So I am a licensed clinical social worker. I have been in practice for over 40 years, and that would be 40. I've been around the block a few times and been through many incarnations of mental health theories and mental health practices. And a few years, I always loved my work and I always had a very, very full and busy practice. But a few years ago, I started to really question that. I started to question the efficacy of what we were doing and and the results we were getting. And so, as often happens when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I was introduced to a new and a sort of evolutionary understanding of how mental health actually works, what we now call our innate mental health. And that has been a game changer, both for me and for my clients.
So, Barbara, talking about our innate mental health, our innate resiliency, I think, and just to to amp this up with our viewers a little bit, Barbara's not mainstream. She really comes from a different perspective. She sees mental health in a very exciting way that's not, do these 5 things to fix yourself, or you can do 1 through 7 to be happy all the time. This is really dependent upon your innate resiliency, what you're born with. So, Barbara, if you can talk just a little bit about that, because it's so very different from what a lot of people are used to and what a lot of people hear all the time, that message that we're not broken, that, we have this innate well-being inside of us. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in the field of mental health, and I was trained clinically, classically, we focused on the world of diagnoses. Actually, the beginning, the meaning of the word psychotherapy or psychological is the logic of the soul or the logic of the psyche. But we became increasingly focused on the pathology. So in the 1980s, when we hooked on to a paid medical model for psychology, we were hooked on to the medical community that really focused on what was wrong and what was broken. So we focused on the content of our thinking. We focused on the content of behaviors. We focused on the content of feelings. And we looked at that through a lens that was negative and that was pathology-based. So when we look at that, as practitioners, what you're going to see and what the experience that is created is of someone who is sick, right? So when you start to see, wait a minute, just like the human body, our bodies are designed, our minds are designed to help us get through life. We have immune systems. I mean, I've been to several conferences on the immune system in the body when I was really sick with Lyme disease a few years ago. And it's amazing. They've discovered at least 2 immune systems, and there are probably many more that we haven't even figured out yet. And all of these incredible ways that the body is designed to help us get through life. Well, when we are focused in the field of psychology on what's wrong and what's broken, and again, just loading up the diagnoses to get more and more coverage for treatment, that becomes your total experience of the human psychology. And so what this understanding does is that it points us to a totally different direction. It points us towards looking at and really examining and reflecting on the innate capacity that our mind has to help us get through life. That we actually are designed. I mean, think about that for a minute. Like, why would we be designed to be broken? We're not designed to drive ourselves crazy. We're not designed to be broken. We're not designed to need crutches to make it from point A to point B. And so when you start to shift your focus towards what we call an innate health model, so much more is revealed that, we're going to talk more about our innate resilience and other ways in which this just is a complete game changer.
So Barbara, let me ask you this question. This is something I think about a lot. I think when the field of medicine came up with categories for mental health issues, bipolar, generalized anxiety disorder, major depression, whatever it may be. Like you say, a lot of this had to do with trying to categorize patients so that you could come up with a treatment plan. Some of it may have also been based to some extent on compensation and financial types of measures. But do you think that labeling someone impedes their ability to get better? I wonder about this sometimes, because what we're saying is that you have this condition, so you're broken. And
Absolutely.
I wonder about that. I wonder if that's an issue sometimes. So, we put people into little categories. You have bipolar, you have schizophrenia, you have depression, you have anxiety disorder, but not everyone is the same, and not everyone fits into these categories correctly or exactly. And I just wonder what kind of message we're giving patients when we give them that diagnosis. Sometimes that could maybe be could impede their improvement potentially.
Absolutely. Chris, when I was in graduate school in the 70s, we weren't allowed to diagnose people. Mm-hmm. It was a complete no to diagnose someone, because that would be a label that would follow them for the rest of their lives.
Right.
And so once you slap that label on someone, I can't tell you the number of people I have who come into my office who say, oh, I have anxiety, or I have depression, or I have bipolar, or I have PTSD. I have these things, and now it's a thing, right? It's a fixed thing that you are now walking through life with. And so now one of my greatest joys that I have is they come in and they bring in their big long list of all the things that are wrong with them. And I say, well, no, you actually don't have those. And some people will go, oh, yes, I do. And leave my office. But other people are like, well, yeah, I kind of thought that was a little weird. Like, I don't always feel depressed. I don't always feel sad. I don't always feel angry. Yeah, and they'll become curious and interested to hear more. But when you are convinced and you have someone in a white coat or a bun, as a social worker has, telling you, yeah, you have this, that you are broken and you have these things. And the best you can hope for in life is to find all these tools and all these practices that you need to perform for the rest of your life to be able to get through and cope and manage. So, yeah, it actually creates, and I see this all the time now, it's created innocently. I mean, none of us in this field, none of us in the helping professionals ever intended to create more harm than we did good, right? Do no harm. That's the first law of medicine. And certainly that was the case for myself and for all of my colleagues. We would have given anything to have our clients feel better and not be suffering. But we just didn't understand that we were pointing them towards a theory that wasn't true. It was a current level of understanding that looked true to us, but now we see something so much deeper and so much more true.
Right. I mean, I think the intentions were good, right? I think that by putting people into categories, it certainly helped with research. It helped with decisions in regards to medications and that. But then there's that whole labeling aspect that becomes a real inherent problem.
Yeah.
So how do you approach patients? Tell us what your approach is like.
Well, now what I do, my intake form is very different. It doesn't ask people to list what's wrong with them, which of course that was the outset before. We had to have that as part of our record. Tell me, and in some cases, I've worked in various places where there are like 15-page histories where we're studying everything that went wrong in your life, including what your mother was doing and thinking while she was pregnant with you, so now I don't do that. I ask people, tell me what you'd like to get out of this, and, tell me a little bit about yourself. So the first couple of sessions, we kind of talk about their dogs and, who are you? Tell me a little bit about you. Then what I do, what I consider I do now is really more of a psychoeducation, is I teach them this new understanding that is actually principle-based and not theory-based. Okay. That there is, and William James, who was the father of psychology in the 1860s, always said when we discover the principles behind human psychology, it will at that point move to be a science. And that's what this understanding has done. It has moved us into being a science. There is only one way that it works, and it's very simple. And once you point people towards that, again, you're not broken, there's nothing really wrong with you other than you don't know how to use your mind the way it's designed to work. Once you point people towards that, if they're open to hearing that, it changes people on such a deep and transformational level. It's just extraordinary.
So, Barbara, with the pandemic and everything that's going on right now, what are you seeing with your patients initially? Like, what are they struggling with? And can you tell us a little bit about how you've directed them into this truth, and maybe let us hear about a patient story?
Well, yeah, sure. Let me just start by saying, though, that one of the greatest parts of the misunderstanding that we all have been living under is that the circumstances of our lives have some capacity to ruin our lives, to ruin our day, right? That a pandemic is a stressful thing, right? Or that homeschooling is a nightmare and is causing us to be out of our mind, or that that snow drives us crazy, or a gray sky can make us depressed, right? That's been a part of our thinking since the beginning of time. It's in all of our popular language, our popular songs. You hurt my feelings. This is so stressful. And back in the 80s, when I was practicing and I was working with a lot of open heart patients at that point, Hans Selye created this long list of 100 top stressors, right? And actually the insurance companies still use that to measure your life expectancy. Number one on the list was death and divorce and moving, right? So we've been working with this idea that what is happening to us or the way that we're feeling and our ability to cope is coming from the circumstances of what is happening in our lives on the outside, right? So again, Nancy, to answer your question more specifically, people come in and they're like, oh, the pandemic. I was like, well, that's really interesting, because I have found the pandemic like one of the most interestingly creative and deepening times in my adult life. Isn't that interesting? That some people really find it, challenging and interesting. And other moments you think, man, this is great. I don't ever want to go into an office again. And then in the next moment you're feeling, oh, I don't think I can handle this one more minute. And then the next minute. So when people come in with this idea that it is the pandemic that is causing my stress, they feel trapped and they feel like they are a victim of circumstance. And when we feel those awful feelings of feeling trapped and a victim, and this is so depressing and this is so awful, and oh my God, you're going to your point, Chris, you're going to look for something to help you feel better.
Right.
Like, that's kind of common sense. Like, this feels like hell. I need something to lift the burden.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you do see with this old understanding, lots of people who are turning to substances or food or, whatever their perceived balm is. Right. And so that's when you see these things shooting up, these problems shooting up. And then it's like, yep, see, it's the pandemic. Only it's not true, because if it were in fact the pandemic, everyone in the world is experiencing a pandemic right now.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone. And like Nancy and I were talking about before we started this recording, what a lot of us are seeing is, wow, there are a lot better ways to work.
Sure.
Wow, there are much better ways to think about this. Wow, I have gotten so much closer to my kids. In my case, I've gotten so much closer to my partner. I have connected in ways, a pandemic, even though it can cause lots and lots of physical problems, has no ability to put a feeling into you. It does not work that way, because if it did, then we would all have the same feelings. And if it were really coming from the pandemic, then we would all feel that way all the time, and we don't.
I mean, it's an interesting point. I mean, I see people all the time who have really thrived during this time. Now they're doing things differently, and they're doing things in ways they never would have thought of doing. So maybe they're working from home instead of in office, like many of us are, and they've really enjoyed it. Or they've, like you said, become closer in particular relationships. And then you see other people who are really struggling, and they're having a lot of difficulty. And so how does that happen? I mean, why are there people who do well and people who don't do well? Maybe that gets to the bottom of what you're talking about, and how more of us who aren't doing well can maybe do better during times like this that are stressful.
Great question. So yeah, this is really at the core of this new understanding. And that is, for Nancy's benefit here, is that we are always and only, and those are big words in the field of psychology, as I'm sure they are in the field of medicine, but that's the difference between a theory and a principle, right? We are always and only living in the feeling of our thinking about what's happening to us, and not in the feeling of the circumstance itself.
Barbara, can you just repeat that so people can really think about that for a minute?
Yep. We are always and only, big words, always and only living in the feeling of our thinking about what's happening to us, and not in the feeling of the circumstance itself. Now, why is that important? Well, because the pandemic has been here now for a year, Right. And if it really feels true to you that your feelings are coming from the pandemic, that means a year of living hell. Only most of us haven't lived in this for a year of living hell. Thought, on the other hand, is a moving target. We have on the average about 60,000 thoughts a day. As we have however many thousands, hundreds of thousands heartbeats, respirations, there's an energy that is moving through us, and these thoughts come and go. So 1 minute you may think, oh my God, I can't, I've had several of those this week. It's like, oh, I miss my friends. I miss hugs. I just want to sit in an office with my clients. I'm getting sick of this, and then in the next minute I think, well, I think I'll go bake some brownies. Right. And so when you realize that you're living in the feeling only, always and only just of your thinking, this passing energy that's moving through us. Okay, well, right now I'm kind of down in the dumps. I got some really bad news yesterday about a family member. And I felt terrible. I mean, I took a nap at noon. I mean, I just felt awful. And then this morning I woke up and it's in a different place for me today. So that we actually have a psychological immune system based on the fact that these things don't stick around forever. There's a healing, kind of like a bed sore or a wound that happens as thought moves through us.
So we have some control over this, is what you're saying, I think.
Not until you see. See, until you understand, oh, all I'm doing right now is feeling my thinking. It feels like you have no control, like you are, in fact, a victim of circumstance. And that is a terrible feeling where people are always looking for escape. But when you see, oh, wait a minute, I'm thinking, look at what I'm thinking about. That's what's creating this feeling. That wakes us up. It's like waking up from a daydream. And you go, oh, well, I don't want to feel crummy. I don't want to fixate on this one thought and make myself feel lousy. So waking up from a daydream, there's nothing that you have to do. It just kind of moves on. Like, okay. Does that make sense?
It does. So would it be fair to say that feelings, or what we perceive as feelings, are really thoughts, and we have some control as to whether or not we fixate on a particular thought or move on to a different thought? Is that
yes, to some degree, Chris. And that's a good question, because one of the mistakes that I think created more problems than it ever solved in the field of psychology was the fact that we were in the thought manipulation business.
Okay.
Right. So we had cognitive therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, positive psychology, you name it, we had it.
Right.
David Byrne, way back in the 80s. Right. So there's something you have to do about thought. So once you see that there's actually nothing that you can do about thought, like if I tell you, listen, I really, really want you to not think about this. Don't go home and don't think about this. Then when it pops into your head, you're like, oh no, she told me not to think about this. I shouldn't be thinking about this. Oh my God, what do we, and then they would come back. It was the same thing. And I'll share this with you, Nancy, because I know you've asked me to use some client things. I used to just sort of dread when I had a client who came in with an anxiety disorder. And it was because I could never help them to get better. So what would happen is they would come in and they'd say, oh, I feel anxious and I'm having this anxious thinking. I think, oh, okay, great. And I had this big book that I'm going to have bronzed at some point called the Anxiety and Phobia Workbook. And we would give you exercises to go home and do, like, oh, just go home and don't think about this, try thinking this. And they would come back and they'd go, oh, I'm still anxious, and I tried it, I really tried it, but maybe if I tried it this way, if I tried, I didn't try it enough, I should have tried it more. Like, don't worry, we've got another exercise, try this one. And they'd go home and they'd do that one for a week, and they'd come back and they'd be like, maybe I need to do it 3 times a day, maybe it's because I was, my mother's anxious too, and they would just, and the anxiety would just like get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I'd be like, oh, there's something really wrong with you. Go to your doctor and get some drugs. Well, it never occurred to me that we were setting themselves up for failure. We were setting themselves up by telling you there's something you have to do about the fact that you have anxious thinking sometimes. But when you can sort of normalize that, first of all, we all feel anxious sometimes.
Okay.
Like, who doesn't?
Sure.
If you have a whole bunch of anxious thoughts about what's going to happen, or what's going to happen next week, or what's going to happen in a job interview, you're going to feel anxious for a period of time. And then when you leave that alone and let it just kind of flow, in a little while, when you start thinking about something else, you're not going to feel anxious anymore.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm just thinking about patients that I've treated over the years, and often from the medical perspective, we reach for a drug, that is part of our toolbox. So someone has anxiety or dysthymia, mood disorder, depression, we'll give them a certain medication, let's say Prozac or Paxil or Zoloft, what we call SSRIs. And what some patients complain of and leads to them coming off the medication is that they don't feel anything anymore. Like they feel numb. They don't feel that anxiety. They just feel like almost like a zombie. So some of these feelings they're really normal, right? They're part of being human, is feeling a little bit of anxiety and feeling whatever emotion there is. So you don't want to blunt them completely, or sometimes at a high dose of the meds that happens. Not always. The meds are, that's a whole other topic. We won't get into medication, but it's one of the things I've noticed over the years is that a lot of patients do say, yeah, my anxiety's better, but now I don't feel anything. And I don't like that. So I think it's just part of being human, right? Is having some of these anxieties, feelings, whatever.
Yes.
Saying that.
Maybe that, I've heard you say normalizing versus psychologizing. So maybe you can answer Chris's question, kind of talking about that a little bit. Sure.
Well, first of all, Chris, there's no pill that will give you peace of mind.
Right. And that
it's not possible. Will it raise your serotonin levels? One of the things that the research is doing now, a lot of the research on the way the brain works and, neuroplasticity and things, they now know that 3 minutes of negative thinking and your serotonin levels are going to start dropping.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no question there's a mind-body connection there. But just raising the serotonin levels, and we all know, anybody who's worked in the field knows that people are on a bazillion cocktails of medicines that, that don't touch it, because it's not touching the content of your thinking. So if you have a mental habit where you're fixating on depressing thoughts, or this is where people really get stuck. If you're really convinced that it is the circumstances of your life that's creating your mood, you ruminate on that and you ruminate on that and you ruminate on that, and it keeps you stuck. It's like people who ruminate on the loss of a child, let's say. And they ruminate on it and ruminate, it feels true to them that it is the loss of the child that is creating their depression. But in fact, what it is, there are plenty of people who lose children. And I don't mean to sound cavalier about this, because I understand there's probably nothing worse in the whole world than losing a child. But when you realize that, you see that there are plenty of people who lose children who who become great, activists, or who start a foundation, or who go on to have, to help other people. And it's never that our experience is being created by what happens to us. And so seeing that and seeing the ever-changing nature of thought, that it's moving through us like the weather. And sometimes, just like the weather, the storm clouds will gather.
Yep.
Right? Now, when we fixate on that, if I told you, and you guys can relate to this as, medical professionals, if you tell someone, I want you to fixate on your breathing, you're going to hyperventilate.
Yeah, it's true.
Right? But when you just sort of can trust, wait a minute, my body knows how to breathe. It knows how to breathe. My mind knows how to do what it does. Our bodies are designed for that. That is our innate mental health, our innate health. And once you see that, and your attention is focused on that, on the body and the mind's ability and capacity to help you get through life. Like, why wouldn't it be? I mean, that doesn't even make any sense now that I look at it. Why wouldn't we be designed for success? Everything else in nature is designed for success. So once you start pointing people towards that, undoing the misunderstanding of where their experience of life is coming from, most people are like on their way and off to, everybody's saying, and I think most people who've studied this say, wow, why didn't anybody ever tell me this before? Well, because we didn't know. I used to work with a psychiatrist who was in medical school at Brown in the 1930s, and they used to do ice water enemas for depressed patients in the basement of Butler Hospital to treat depression, Well, that was their current level of thinking at that point. But now we get it. Now we see how it works. And once you discover a principle like this, it's so powerful because it's always true. We don't have to worry about the psychology du jour. We don't have to worry about what practices and self-help programs we have to go to. It's like, oh, okay, my mind is just doing what my mind does. And sometimes the storm clouds will gather, and then the less focus and energy I put into it, and the less I pathologize that, the faster it moves on. And okay, I'm human. That's how it works.
But you really can't get rid of, anxiety or some of these moods that come across as completely, because that's part of the human condition, quite honestly.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what people don't like about sometimes when they lose all of that completely due to medication. And as a disclaimer, if you're on any of these meds, I'm not saying to come off them. Talk to your physician before you do something like that, because a decision was made for probably a good reason for you to be on it, and you should have a conversation if you're thinking about coming off them. But anyway, just a disclaimer to that. I don't want to.
Yeah, you don't. These are very powerful drugs, and you never want to stop cold turkey. Number one.
No. You want
to talk that through and figure it out. But
sure.
But there again, your wisdom is guiding you. Like, I don't think this is helping me.
Right.
And when we start pointing people towards their innate wisdom, their mind's ability to determine what makes sense, what starts to emerge in that place is your innate common sense. You become much more in tune with your mind's ability to have intuition,
right.
and to have and to listen more carefully to ways in which you're doing things, and have insights that will help you to see things that just weren't within your field of vision before.
Right.
So I heard a couple.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chris.
I'm talking enough, please.
And you both said some great things that I just kind of want to back up and touch upon. Barbara, you used the weather as a great analogy. So really our our true default system is one of well-being. And yeah, we'll have storm clouds come across and everything else, but it's normal to the point that Chris made. It's normal to feel anxious and depressed at times, and that's just the normal cadence of being human. And speaking of being human, if you want to read up on this a little bit more, we are going to put a link on our Facebook page that will guide you to a free PDF download of a book by Amy Johnson, Being Human, that touches upon this a little bit more. So, Barbara, then with the patients that you deal with, you talked about how you used to kind of treat anxiety a little bit. Now, what would you do, and what would you say to someone coming in your office now that's saying the same things to you about, oh my God, I'm so anxious and this pandemic has just put me over the edge? We talked a little bit about that, but maybe you could point out a patient's story.
Well, first of all, what's really interesting is that all of my colleagues during this pandemic are absolutely swamped with clients. I mean, you guys probably know you can't even get somebody in to see a mental health practitioner. They don't even answer their phones. They're so swamped, right? I have lots of time because my patients come in, I teach them this. They're like, oh, okay, I feel a lot better. Okay. I don't have anybody literally who stays stuck in this. They move on. Like, yeah, well, today's not a real great day, or not even a day, a moment. So people may come in thinking it's the pandemic, or thinking it's the isolation, or thinking it's whatever it is they're thinking. And once you just start to very simply, I mean, the beautiful thing about truth is that at its core, it's very simple. That's why Einstein was the one who coined the term, keep it simple. Right? Because every complex organism there at the heart of it is a simple construct. And so when you just tell people, no, you're not living in the feeling of the pandemic. The pandemic isn't making you anxious. What's making you anxious is how you're thinking about the pandemic at this moment. Now, are you anxious right now? No, I'm not anxious right now. Okay. Well, why do you think you're not anxious now, since we still have a pandemic? Well, I'm not thinking about it. Bingo. So that, I would say, while it isn't a specific client, I would say that's probably what happens every day when people come in. And so the people that I work with who are open to hearing this, not everybody is. I've had people go back to their psychiatrist or whatever who will say, that woman is very dangerous and you need to get away from her as soon as possible. But once people, if they are open to hearing this and open to listening, it's common sense. I don't tell people, first of all, anything that isn't true. And people we have a pretty good truth detector, right, in life. And so we can, people are like, I'm like, does that make sense to you? Yeah, it does. Well, how does it feel? How does it feel to you right now to know that what you're feeling, this anxiety that you're feeling, is coming from you and not at you? How does that feel? Well, that feels better. Yeah. I don't feel as frightened because I know, I'm in control, right? So what I tell kids, especially, I said, it's like, how many of you fight over the remote control? Yeah, we all fight over. Well, now you've got the remote control. Now that you can see, look at what's going on in my mind. Oh, yeah, okay. Now I can easily and comfortably either wait for it to pass, or sometimes I can just wake up and get it to move on. Now, again, that's the problem. If people think, well, I can't get it to move on, I can't get it to move on, it's like, it's okay. You're not in charge of when the grass comes up or that the sun is coming up tomorrow, or you don't have to worry about when it goes on. All you need to rest in is the absolute knowledge of the way it works. And that is that at some point, when your mental habit isn't doing it, we fondly refer to that as a thought storm, or you're just like replaying it and ruminating on it. At some point when that lets go, it moves on all on its own. And there's nothing you have to do about that. And that just takes all this weight off of people. One of the things that my clients love more than anything is, there's nothing I have to do. Because they've been told you have all these practices to do. One of my colleagues, Michael Neal, I love this story, said one day he was sitting on the floor of his office and he looked around him and he realized he had over 1,000 self-help books. And he just started laughing. And he's like, if self-help books worked, I would be the healthiest person on the face of the earth.
Right.
So they actually won't publish them anymore because nobody's buying them anymore.
Huh. Interesting.
So, Barbara, then, anyone listening, I think now to this conversation realizes that it's almost liberating in a way to know we're not victim to circumstance, that that we do have that default state of well-being. I think as we close the podcast, could you talk just a little bit more about that and the definite message you want to leave our viewers with?
Yeah, sure. One of the things that I certainly have gotten personally, and I think that's probably the best place to go because it's very real to me, is really being so much more in touch with sort of a deep inner wellspring, which is a birthright for me of peace. That when the world is swirling, that I can drop beneath the waves, if you will, of the surface waves into a place of quiet and refuge. So many people find that, they go to church to find that, or they go out in nature to find that, and they really believe that that's where they find it. Now, that may be one of the places where we can get in touch with it. But the good news is that it's always there. It's always there right beneath the surface of this chaotic thinking. It's like, if you think about it, like with the waves in the ocean, at the surface, it may be really, really choppy, but when you go down deeper below the surface, it gets quieter. And the deeper you go, the more quiet and peaceful it is. Well, our psyches are like that. When we aren't caught up in this maelstrom of thinking, and especially the maelstrom of thinking that is being caused by this misunderstanding of where our feelings are coming from, when our minds start to settle down, everything gets calm and clear, like a snow globe, right? When you shake a snow globe, you can't see anything. It's just like full of static. But when you settle it down, it's clear. Its design is clear. And so knowing for me that no matter what is going on in my life, that I can always and only tap into that place that resides in me, that deep inner wellspring, where there may be peace for me, that can give me sometimes just enough breathing room to see things a little differently, to get over a hurdle, to come up with a creative solution, to open up to possibility, lift the clouds for just a minute to see that behind those clouds there's a blue sky, and it's okay. And so that, I think, is the greatest gift of all, is that you have everything you need, right, contained within this remarkable system that allows you to get through life, to be the eye of the hurricane rather than being destroyed by the hurricane.
That's great. Barbara, if anyone does want to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
The best way probably is through my website, which is called giftsofinsight.net. And you can look at some of my work on there, and you can, get in touch with me if you need to. I'm happy to talk to anybody who would like to hear more about this. Nancy and I talked a little bit about not giving you too much, because right now there's so much on the internet that it can be a little overwhelming. So we wanted to just sort of keep it slow. But for anyone who's interested in learning more about this, I'd be happy to talk with you and point you in the right direction.
Perfect. Thank you.
I mean, I think the bottom line is we're all really designed to succeed. We have this resiliency that we have to tap into, that we can tap into. And it's probably hard to really go through all this and get complete understanding in a 45-minute podcast. But certainly if anyone's interested, reach out to Barbara. I think that this information can be really helpful to many out there who are currently suffering or feel they're suffering due to circumstances. So
it's life-changing, life-changing in a big way.
So
thanks for having me, guys.
This is
it was fun.
Wonderful. We appreciate you coming on. I do hope that some people out there who have the need do reach out to you. I also want to once again recognize our sponsor, Bay Coast Bank, which is just right for all your financial needs. And you can visit baycoastbank.com or call 508-678-7641. Nancy, do we have a podcast in 2 weeks? Do we have one set up already?
Yes, we do. We're going to approach the topic of human trafficking on March 5th. So that's more to come on that.
I'm really excited about that. You know, it's one of those things we don't think about and we don't realize that it happens, but it happens all around us. And we'll learn some ways that we can recognize that and impact on it and help others who may be victims of human trafficking. And there'll be some information on just really how large the scale of this problem is. It's a lot larger than people really realize. So that's going to be an exciting topic. Once again, Barbara, thank you very much. This was great. I think a lot of people benefited from this, and I do hope some people reach out to you who may want to delve into this deeper. We just scratched the surface, of course, with this topic. It's hard to do it all in 45 minutes, but if you have any interest, reach out to Barbara at the website that she mentioned, which is, Barbara, can you mention once again that website?
giftsofinsight.net.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it and have a great day.